All right, he's Chris Plank, OU softball play-by-play voice, and all-around good guy as well. Plank, I had to laugh a little bit this morning because the story coming out of the Wichita State game is obviously Grace Lyons hitting 3 home runs, and the reaction was, whoa, is Grace Lyons the best shortstop in college softball? To which I was like, well, yeah, I think that's kind of been the case for a while. Maybe I'm missing something here, but last night wasn't the first time that I thought, yeah, Grace Lyons is elite at her position.
Yeah, I've tagged her as the best shortstop in softball for the first time I saw her play. And listen, there's Grace. Every single player, it seems, comes into college softball as either a shortstop or a pitcher. And she came in as a shortstop, and you think about the other shortstops that had been, Jada Coleman was a shortstop. Terry Jennings was a shortstop. Sid Romero had never played third until she got to OU. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of thought, well, maybe after Kelsey Arnold graduates, she'll move to shortstop. Maybe Kaylee Clifton will move to shortstop. But Grace Lyons has been it since day one, and she's the best. There's names like Sis Bates, who was at Washington for a long time. That was pretty special. You look across the Big 12, we've had a handful of really good shortstops. It's probably, outside of pitcher, the best, most talented position in all of college softball. But yeah, I think Grace Lyons, because of what she does defensively, is the best. The offense last night, and as we taped this on a Wednesday morning, last night has kind of been her this year. Not that she's hitting 3 home runs every single game, but she's hitting the ball hard. And she had that 18-game hitting streak that came to an end in Oklahoma City. And what did she do? Had 3-4 hits in the next 2 games. So yeah, if you didn't realize Grace Lyons was the best shortstop in college softball, she really put an exclamation point on it last night.
I think most of us look at the win over Wichita State and say, oh, okay, well, it's just another run rule win, 25 run rules out of the first 30 games of the season. It doesn't sound like Patty Gasso necessarily looks at it that way. Like, the tone from her post-game press conference wasn't just, oh, yeah, it was another run rule. Everything was great. Everything was fine. Is she maybe really looking for ways to keep this team honest and humble at this point? Or is she really seeing something with her team that maybe the rest of us aren't at this point?
I think it's more the latter. And I use this analogy on my radio show, and someone got mad at me. But I've always heard this in the Disneyland dad, right? And it's a big thing where – and it doesn't have to be divorced parents. It can be you're married, but dad time is fun time. And when dad's around, you're going to the park, or you're going to Target, or you're getting Frappuccinos or whatever. And that's the fun that you have with dad. As fans, we get to be Disneyland dads, right? We get to show up and we enjoy the game and we celebrate and we're there for all the good. We're not always there, if at all, when it comes to the grind and the practice and the ins and outs of what greatness looks like in the eyes of Patty Gasso. And I think my opinion is that she's seen some things that are alarming to her. And part of the reason why they're alarming is because she realizes the amount of talent that they have. This isn't a team that doesn't lack depth. This isn't a team that doesn't lack star power. This isn't a team that doesn't lack pitching. The only thing that it might lack is to make sure they have that attention to detail and they have that championship mindset. Grace Lyons embodied it to me last night, right? She makes a mistake in the first inning, backs it up with a home run. Makes a mistake, I think, in the second, right? The squeeze bunt was a little bit too hard, and they got Tiare Jennings thrown out at home, backs it up with a home run in the third and a home run in the fifth. So you make mistakes, but when you make your mistake, you come back and you make the team better because you're focused. They're leaving the bag early. They've been called for 3 leaving the bags early over the last couple of weeks. 3, that's unacceptable. Errors are going to happen, but a ball going through the 5-hole of a third baseman is not an error that I think you look at and say, oh, that happens. And if you make it, then you step up and you get a line drive base hit or you hit one out of the yard the next time up. So I know that it's wild at 30-0 with 25 wins in run rule fashion to hear a coach say, we've got to be better in certain areas, but Oklahoma does. And they will. Yeah. There's a small attention to detail that greatness kind of teeters in how diehard you are in the attention to that detail, or how you say, that's good enough, we won. 10-1 is not a bad win over a good Wichita State team, but how you got there was concerning for coach. And I thought she hit it on the head. There's just little things this team needs to continue to improve on.
I get this question. I'm sure you get it even more than I do. Do you want this team to lose a game before it gets to the postseason? Saw the Georgia game last year and you know, how that turned things around. It's a complicated answer. I guess for me, you don't ever want to go out there and actively try to lose a game. And this team is so talented. Why not go chase history? Again, it's probably a complicated answer. But if anyone asks you, hey, do you want to see this team maybe suffer a loss before it gets to Oklahoma City? What do you say to that?
It's a hell of a question, is what I would say. This team has the kind of talent to where it can chase history. And no team has ever finished a season undefeated. And I think it's in college baseball and in college softball, it's like virtually impossible with the amount of games that you have. But when you say, do you want to see this team lose a game? All right, well, you want to lose Oklahoma State or Texas, right? Because those are the two teams left with the 6 games you have against them that you look at maybe knocking on the door of that tier 1 in college softball where Oklahoma is. And Texas has played really well recently. I know that this isn't the great radio answer, but check back with me in 2 weeks because I think a lot of it depends on how they play this weekend against UAB, Wednesday next week against Tulsa, and how they get back into conference play with Tech in Lubbock. Tech is not very good this year. Mm-hmm. But it is a team on a Friday night where you go down there and the next thing you know, you're in a 3-1 game and it's in the 6th. You're like, oh, this is a little tighter than we expected. So it's a great question. You never want to say, oh, yeah, we want to lose a game or we wouldn't mind losing a game. But in a fan's mind, you realize how hard it is to go undefeated and you worry, all right, did we exert too much getting to this point and being undefeated heading into the postseason? There's all kinds of different beliefs on that. I tend to fall into the category where if you think you have a team that can make history, go make history. I like Patty Gasso wanted to lose to Georgia last year, but it made that team better. They should have lost on Sunday to Baylor, right? Sure. Girl Mix playing left field, game's over. So in my mind, they've already lost the game. But they seem to respond well against Wichita State. There's bigger games to come. I'm not in that group that thinks you have to enter the postseason with 1 loss. I just think you need to enter the postseason playing your best ball. And who knows, Tyler, maybe that loss comes in a regional. They lost to Wisconsin a couple of years ago in 2019, the last time we had, in the last regional at home against Wisconsin prior to sweeping through everything. And they were trailing Wichita early in that game last year. So they've lost some regional games. But, man, it's just they're so good right now, Tyler. I don't know if I would be worried about this team going unscathed and that being something that could hover over them. You're always getting your opponent's best shot. You're Oklahoma.
Jordyn Ball is a freshman, but she didn't look like a freshman early on in the year, and she continued to be really good. Now, it's natural for a true freshman to get better as the year goes on.
Right.
So has that happened with her? And if so, where have you seen improvement from her the past month?
So tomorrow on the radio show, we're supposed to talk to Jen Rocha, and that's a really, really good question for Coach Rocha. I would say from my fairly untrained eye, she got control of the illegal calls from earlier in the season. And, we can go down that. I think you and DJ have talked about it. We can go to that rabbit hole at some point if you want, but it's tough. You go from travel ball and high school ball where certain things you do are legal, and then all of a sudden you get to college and it's not. Then you get into the international game and it is. So we've got to find some sort of symmetry with the illegal pitches. And it's going to be all season, right? Kelly Barnhart, no one ever stopped whenever she was at Florida. There's been others throughout the history that people thought were illegal. But I think she's done a good job of getting a handle on that. She's been really good, I think, you don't want her to control the energy, but to make sure that you're not out of your mind in the first inning and you're good and level-headed, but you want her to bring the energy. And I think she's moving the ball more, right? I think that when she's been challenged, she's like, okay, I just can't throw the ball by her. I think you've seen she can throw every pitch, and she can throw every pitch effectively, which is wild to think about. So to me, I think you've seen growth in just the emotional handling of the game and not being too high early or I never see her down, but just not getting too juiced in the first and making sure that carries over. Then secondly, constantly moving the ball all over the zone. Her and Jen Rocha really seem to have a good idea of the attack they want to have, the plan they want to have, and she executes it to perfection so far.
The talent isn't in question with this team. We talked about it. It's all about fighting the feeling of satisfaction. If that's even there, staying on edge, continuing to get better and better week after week. How much do you think it helps with this team? Because you see Kinsey Hansen be sidelined for a week and a half, 2 weeks. Well, Lindsey Elam, 5 consecutive home runs, right? Kinsey's healthy, and it's like, well, we got to put her a designated player because, I mean, Lindsey's just on a hot streak right now. Alyssa Brito gets in the lineup. She's ripping the cover off the ball. Lou might have a hard time right now getting in on a day-in, day-out basis. How much does it help fight that when there are so many players right now? If you get your spot, not a whole lot of players are giving it up. And it's a fight, man. It's a fight every single week to find your place in this lineup.
You know, and I think if we were to play more 7-inning games, I think you would see some freshmen that would be knocking on that door too. Unfortunately, those opportunities really haven't been there for the Tria Colemans or the Hannah Kors of the world. So I don't think they're quite in that mix yet. But you've seen Sophia Nugent make some noise whenever she's had an opportunity, and Jordyn Ball when she's been given it bats. But it's a great point. You know, that's what makes this team, I think, so good. You know, you have about 5 different outfield combinations that if any 5 of those combinations started, you're like, all right, I feel good with this. You have 5 to 6 different infield combinations where you're like, okay, it's good. And you know, as a player, the key to being in that lineup game in and game out is to hit. You got to hit the ball. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Lindsey Elam has demanded that she's in the lineup because of the way she's hit the ball. You hit it on the head, 5 straight at bats with a home run. But ended up hitting the 6th in the next game. She is, and that's part of what being a captain is all about, I think, right? And this goes back to your previous question. Leadership. They need the leadership to be on the field. And I think when Lindsay's on the field, they're a better team from, you know, understanding where they need to be. And I think Grace Lyons brings leadership. And I think Jana Johns brings leadership. I think Kinsey Hansen brings swagger with her leadership. So, you know, you're going to have to make a dent when you're out there because, you know, if you stub your toe even the slightest, that Riley Boone's knocking on the door if she's not out there, or Lou Donahue's knocking on the door if she's not out there. Lou Donahu had struggled this year, but you kind of get the sense that things are starting to click for her a little bit with her big hit on Sunday. So, yeah, it's a great point. There's so much depth on this team, and I honestly think the best defensive outfield they have, we haven't even seen on the field together yet. I mean, how scary is that?
Yeah.
So they're really loaded top to bottom. And I know some fans start thinking about the future and it's like, man, but what about, I worry about the transfer portal and we'll get a text. I haven't seen so-and-so player. I haven't seen this person. And I think what's made this team great in 2022 is that everyone is bought in. Everyone's bought in. They understand their role. Now we worry about 23 and 23. Hopefully you're holding national championship number 6. But as it stands right now, Tyler, you've got about a 30-person roster, maybe 25, that everyone understands what their responsibility is. And they know that, hey, if I want to get Grace Green, I'm asked about a lot. If I want to get my chance, when I get those opportunities, I got to hit. And when you hit, you find your way in the lineup. And that's it's been incredibly competitive and wild to watch.
I'm going to give you a chance to take a crack at one of the most pressing questions for OU softball Twitter right now. There is a softball poll out there, a ranking, that has UCLA with the first place vote. They're not ranked number 1. UCLA's ranked number 2. They have one of the first place votes out there. 3 more losses than OU. OU won the head-to-head. It's just one vote. It doesn't really matter, but how is OU not unanimously the number 1 ranked team in the sport right now?
Yeah, I wonder if that is not knowing who all has votes off the top of my head. I know Coach Gasso has one, or at least I think she does. I would just assume that's probably, if not a UCLA coach, maybe she puts it off on her SID or her media relations person and says, just handle this. I don't know, because, you know, maybe maybe it's a Big 12 team, which
maybe it's Patty trying to keep her team grounded a little bit.
Yeah, maybe
who knows?
I would say if Patty Gasso has a vote, which I think she does, I'm pretty sure she'd put her team number one based on what she's seen. But yeah, it's a great question because I just had Eric Lopez on my show and he was blown away by it as well. You know, I think Oklahoma separated themselves and they've done it against good teams. You know, if you're looking at last year's schedule and some of the teams they were forced to play because the California teams weren't traveling, you couldn't play in California. I get that. That makes sense, right? If you want to question it. This year, I don't think there's been any question. They've beaten and taken on all comers. So unless you're just someone that can't allow yourself because of your commitment to Texas or Oklahoma State or whatever it might be to not vote for Oklahoma number one, or if you're a UCLA coach, it doesn't make any sense how you can watch what we've seen this year and still have UCLA ahead of Oklahoma. They might end up winning in the end. I don't know. But as we sit here on the cusp of April, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me how Oklahoma would be unanimous number one.
Last one, a 2-game series coming up this weekend against UAB.
Correct.
Heard you talk earlier today. Sounds like UAB is going to be throwing a lot of arms this weekend. What can we expect from the Blazers this weekend?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to talk about it a little bit on the show. But this is a team that's had a couple of games this year that honestly, they're pretty good. You know, they've played some teams tight so far this season. You know, they're going to come in at 20-11. You know, they opened the season against Louisiana Lafayette and nearly beat them. It was a 2-zip game, but then they backed it up with a 23-0 loss.
Wow.
So it's like that doesn't make a lot. It's kind of like the Wichita State series they had last weekend where they scored 1 run against Oklahoma State in 2 games and scored like 20 in 2 combined games against Kansas City. But, you know, they were shut out by Alabama to start March 7-0. But they've and they bounced back with an 8-1 loss to them. So they're not awful. But, yeah, you hit it on the head. They're going to throw a lot of different arms at you. I don't know how effective all of those arms truly are going to be against the Sooners. But, yeah, here it is. They've thrown 1, 2, 3. They've thrown 5 different pitchers this season. And of those 5, you know, you're looking at 18 appearances, 20 appearances, 18 appearances, 21 appearances. Plugger has been hurt a little bit. She's made 7 appearances. So you're going to see a lot of different arms this weekend from UAB. But it's a good challenge, right? It's a team that you know they're going to come in and give you their best shot. Sooners should win 2 games in run rule fashion. And then you just try to make sure that you're winning the battle with yourself. UAB is a good team. Not a great team, not an elite team, a good team. You should beat them twice, handily. How do you beat them? Do you do it with crisp defense, magnifying the championship mindset, not making little mistakes that will cost you down the road, having a complete performance, a clean performance? I think that's what Patty Gasso wants to see more than anything else. And if the Sooners do that, they're going to win 2 games easily. And you and I can talk next week or the following week about now where they are now heading into the teeth of the conference schedule with Texas and Oklahoma State looming.
He's play-by-play voice, Chris Plank. Plank, until next time. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate you having me on Diamond Envy, my favorite softball podcast. All right, see you, dude.